November 1941, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1900 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Scoville Kelsey had never been afraid of risk. As a test pilot in the early days of Army aviation, he had ridden aircraft that were barely more than prototypes, held together with rivets, glue, and prayer. He had flown through storms that bent wings and iced carburetors solid. He had landed on runways so short that his own life insurance paperwork looked uncertain. But none of those moments compared to the danger he faced tonight. Because this time, the danger wasn't physical. It was political. The desk lamp cast a warm circle of light across paperwork he wasn't supposed to have, diagrams he wasn't supposed to approve, and specifications that would get him court-martialed if anyone above him bothered to ask the right questions. Outside his office window, the November wind hissed across the tarmac, ruffling stacks of forms awaiting signatures he wasn't planning on giving. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. On the far edge of the airfield, technicians were shutting down engines, tossing wrenches into toolboxes, preparing to leave for the night. Wright Field was settling into its nocturnal hum, but Kelsey couldn't relax. Not tonight. Not with the war coming. He rubbed his thumb across his temple. A migraine pulsed behind his eyes. He had been fighting the same battle, not with Germany or Japan, but with his own Air Corps for nearly 5 years, and all because of something that should have been obvious: range. Fighters needed range. Bombers needed escort fighters, and escort fighters needed drop tanks. Simple, mathematical, uncontroversial if the bomber mafia didn't exist. But they did exist, and they were winning. Official policy stated, no external fuel tanks, no modification of fighters for drop tanks, no research into drop tanks. It wasn't a recommendation. It wasn't guidance. It was law backed by generals who believed bombers didn't need escort fighters because their formations would be self-defending. Kelsey had argued. He had written memos. He had pushed reports. He had given presentations that walked through fuel consumption curves, combat radius math, and escort mission probability modeling. None of it mattered. The bomber mafia controlled doctrine. Doctrine controlled funding. And funding controlled the future. So the future was screwed. Kelsey stared at the locked door of his office as though expecting a colonel to barge in and demand to know why he hadn't gone home. His hand hovered over the telephone on his desk. The old rotary machine seemed heavier than usual, as if it understood the weight of the decision it was about to enable. He wasn't supposed to call Lockheed. He wasn't supposed to authorize modifications. And he definitely wasn't supposed to do this without paperwork. But he also wasn't supposed to send pilots to die in bombers that would be torn apart by enemy fighters, while American P-40 P-39 and early P-38 sat useless on the ground because they simply couldn't reach the fight. He had seen the reports. He had read the Japanese performance evaluations. He had seen what the Zero could do with external tanks. He knew what the Luftwaffe had been practicing. He understood the war that was coming far better than the generals who still spoke the language of 1932. Ben, Colonel Oliver Patton Eccles, had told him earlier that week, "I can't authorize anything that violates written doctrine." Kelsey had nodded. Eccles hadn't finished. "But I can also choose not to notice things that aren't written down." The implication had been clear. If Kelsey wanted to break the rules, Eccles would look the other way so long as the operation stayed invisible. Invisible meant no papers, no memos, no requisitions, no signatures, no accountability, except the kind that followed you to your grave. Most men would back away from that. Kelsey was not most men. He leaned forward and spun the rotary dial. The phone clicked, hummed, and then began ringing across 2,000 miles of telephone wire stretching from Ohio to California. 1 ring. 2. 3. Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, Burbank, a voice answered. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Kelsey," he said in a low, deliberate tone. "I need to speak with Kelly Johnson, Immediately. There was a pause. Johnson, the rising star of Lockheed Engineering, was not easily summoned. Not unless something critical was happening. Yes, sir. One moment. Kelsey exhaled slowly and let his eyes drift to the blueprint on his desk. The familiar silhouette of the P-38 Lightning stared back at him. Twin booms. A central nacelle. The most advanced fighter America had ever built, and still crippled by lack of fuel. A miracle with clipped wings. The line clicked again. Ben! The voice belonged to Clarence. Kelly Johnson, one of the few men Kelsey considered an equal in both intelligence and audacity. Kelsey said quietly, I need something, and I can't put any of it on paper. He heard Johnson shift, perhaps closing an office door. That sounds dangerous, Johnson said. Which means it's important. What do you need? Kelsey gripped the phone harder. I need drop tank capability on 100 P-38Es, fuel lines, hard points, release mechanisms, all installed during production. Ben, you know that's explicitly prohibited. I know, and you want us to do it anyway. Yes. Another pause. Without authorization? Exactly. Another silence, longer this time. Then Johnson spoke 3 words that sealed the future. We can do it. It happened as simply as that. No signatures, no forms, no witnesses. Just 2 engineers, 1 military, 1 civilian agreeing to break federal policy because the world was about to need range more than doctrine. This stays between us, Johnson warned. If they find out we modified aircraft off-spec, your career is gone. I'll take the blame, Kelsey replied. You could be court-martialed. War is coming, Kelsey said. And we're out of time. Johnson didn't argue. He understood. Better than anyone. We'll start tonight, Johnson said. I'll get a skeleton crew. We'll disguise the modifications as structural revisions. We can route the fuel lines in a way that won't draw attention. Good, Kelsey said. Make sure the attachment points look like standard stress reinforcement mounts. Already thought of that. Kelsey allowed himself his first breath in hours. This will save lives, Kelly. Let's hope it saves the right ones, Johnson replied. The line went dead. Kelsey replaced the receiver gently, as if setting Suffer Life down a bomb, because he had. While most of America slept, Lockheed engineers moved quietly through the P-38 assembly lines. They rewired circuits, added valves, reinforced pylons, and ran fuel lines through places where no inspector would ever look. They worked in silence. They worked fast. They worked knowing that if Washington caught wind of this, Lockheed could lose contracts and Kelsey could lose everything. But they also worked with a sense of mission. They had seen the news from Europe. They had read the intelligence briefings. They understood exactly what Kelsey understood. America was behind. And the first months of the war, if war came, were going to be a bloodbath. These modifications, these illegal fuel systems, weren't just engineering changes. They were life insurance. For pilots not yet in uniform, for missions not yet conceived, for battles not yet fought, and for one assassination that not even the most imaginative engineer could have predicted. Back in Ohio, Kelsey finally shut off the desk lamp and leaned back in his chair. Darkness swallowed the room. He let the tension bleed out of his shoulders, knowing it would return tomorrow. He had crossed a line, a career-ending line, but he felt no regret, only a thin, persistent fear that he had not done enough. What if the war demanded more than he had given? What if pilots died anyway? What if these modifications were discovered before they mattered? He closed his eyes. The bomber generals would never understand. They believed in equations. In theory. In doctrine. Kelsey believed in pilots. He believed in reality. He believed that the next war wouldn't be won by paperwork. It would be won by range. And he had just given America range even if nobody knew it yet. On December 7th, 1941, Japanese carrier aircraft turned Pearl Harbor into a funeral pyre. Explosions tore across Battleship Row. Columns of flame climbed into the sky. The Pacific Fleet burned, capsized, drowned. When Kelsey heard the news, he felt the air go out of his lungs. War had come, the war he had predicted, the war he had prepared for, the war his superiors had refused to acknowledge. He sat in his office as alarms blared across Wright Field. Officers scrambled, telephones rang without pause, radios buzzed with disbelief and fury. And Kelsey thought only one thing: now they will understand. Now they will understand that fighters need range. Now they will understand that escort missions will decide survival. Now they will understand that doctrine doesn't kill, the enemy aircraft do. By nightfall, all across Lockheed's assembly lines, workers were being told to accelerate P-38 production. America needed fighters with reach, fighters with endurance, fighters that could build a shield of steel across the Pacific. And because of a phone call no one was supposed to make, because of a modification no one was supposed to approve, because of a risk no one was supposed to take, the P-38 Lightning already had what America needed. They had drop tanks, they had range. They had the capability that would one day allow 18 P-38 seconds to fly an impossible mission, across impossible distance, at impossible altitude, and ambush the mastermind of Pearl Harbor. But that moment was still 16 months away. For now, Kelsey simply sat back in his chair and whispered to no one, "We're going to need every mile." The morning sun over Guadalcanal rose behind a veil of thin, streaky cirrus high, icy brushstrokes that glowed orange before fading to hard white. Lieutenant Sam Stitch Halperin squinted upward as he walked across Henderson Field's pitted runway, coffee tin in one hand, helmet tucked under his arm. The air already smelled of hot dust and oil. Another day. Another dance with death. The night's rain had dried too quickly, leaving mud cracked like old pottery under his boots. Around him, Marines and Seabees moved with the practiced rhythm of men, who no longer needed orders, they just knew. Ammunition trolleys clattered toward revetments, crews checked gun harmonization rigs, and mechanics wiped sweat from their eyebrows before it even formed. The whole airfield buzzed with weary purpose. He spotted his Hellcat, F6, F3, number 23, stationed in a bamboo revetment under mottled shade. The dark blue fuselage was patched where shrapnel had kissed it 2 days earlier. Fresh ammo belts fed into the wings. 6 50 cals waited like iron fangs. Sam set his coffee aside and ran his hand across the cowling. "Morning, sweetheart," he muttered. His crew chief, Eddie Mitchell, popped up from behind the propeller, face streaked with grease. "She's ready. Replace the starboard feed chute, you shouldn't get that jam again." "Shouldn't," Sam echoed. The word held no promises in the Solomons. Eddie smirked. "Command posted the strike schedule. Looks like you guys are babysitting another convoy off the west coast. Scouts. Say the Japs are getting brave again." "They never stop being brave." Sam strapped on his parachute harness. "Or stupid. Same thing, some days." Sam looked past him to the horizon, where the sea shimmered like hammered metal. Somewhere beyond, the Japanese carrier groups lurked, wounded after losses in the last months, but dangerous, always dangerous. The ready tent was a sauna of sweat, cigarette smoke, and tension. Maps were pinned to a wall with bayonets. A chalkboard listed names of pilots, some crossed out permanently, others marked as wounded or no aircraft. Captain Mark Bishop Harland stood at the front, tapping a pointer against a hand-drawn map of the western approach to Guadalcanal. "Listen up. Japanese bombers probed last night. Our scouts spotted increased radio traffic from Bougainville and Rabaul. Intel believes they're planning a noon raid. Targets likely Henderson, our supply dumps, or the destroyer group refueling south of Savo Island." Murmurs spread around the tent. Bishop raised a hand. "We're not sure which. That means we intercept before they choose." Sam leaned back in his folding chair, rolling a pencil between his fingers. Sweat trickled down his spine. Bishop continued. "We're splitting into 3 sections. First Group 9 Hellcats climbs to 20,000 feet for top cover. Second Group 7 fighters drifts at 14,000 to hit the bombers as they break cloud. Third group on reserve near the coast. Someone asked, "Zeros expected?" Bishop gave a humorless laugh. "When are they not? Expect a heavy escort. The bastards are adapting. After last week, they know we climb faster, dive harder, and hit like a truck falling off a mountain. So they'll try something new today, I guarantee it." He pointed directly at Sam. "Stitch, you're leading mid-altitude. Get above the bombers and slice downward. Don't dogfight unless you have to. Kill the formation." Sam nodded. "That's it. Wheels up in 40 minutes. Pilots stood, chairs scraping, cigarettes got snuffed. Someone cracked a joke about drinking cold beer in Honolulu in a few weeks. No one laughed. Engines roared across Henderson. Sam's Hellcat thundered down the runway, tail rising, the big Pratt & Whitney pulling like a bull charging uphill. He lifted off into humid air, wheels folding beneath him. The island shrank to a patchwork of coconut groves and tan scars where artillery had churned the earth. He formed up with his group, 8 fighters sliding into position like sharks forming a patrol. "Stitch to midsection. Check in." "Voodoo here. All good." "Pip Roger." "Hawkeye Green." One by one, the voices rolled through his headset. Sam glanced upward. High above, the top cover flight glinted in the sunlight, tiny crosses against the blue. Below, the sea stretched endless and indifferent. "Maintain climb," Sam ordered. "Let's get some altitude before the TAFE. Guests arrive." The engine's deep rumble soothed him, steady, powerful. The Hellcat wasn't elegant like the Japanese Zero. It was muscle and armor, a fist with wings. And Sam loved it. At 14,000 feet, they leveled, cruising along a line of cumulus towers rising like white cathedrals. The air thinned, the temperature dropped. Frost gathered at the edges of his canopy. Then Hawkeye's excited voice cracked in the headset. "Got movement bearing 310, 5 miles, altitude 15,000. Looks like..." A pause. "Hell, that's a lot of them." Sam's pulse quickened. He scanned the clouds and saw dark shapes wheeling in formation, first a few, then dozens. And escorts. Zeros swarmed above and around the bomber stream like angry bees. "Midsection, tighten up," he said. "Top cover will take the escorts. We punch the bombers." But as he watched, something was wrong. The Japanese weren't diving. They weren't turning. They were climbing toward thicker clouds overhead. "Huh," Voodoo murmured. "That's new." Suddenly the radio crackled with an alarmed voice from the top cover. "Top cover to all units, be advised. Enemy fighters are not engaging. They're pulling high to form a screen. They want us to chase." Sam's stomach tightened. A trap. He keyed his mic. "Midsection, hold altitude, do not climb." But the Japanese bombers were disappearing into cloud. "We're losing them," Pip warned. "If they break the other side, they'll be right over our convoy." Sam cursed under his breath. Bishop had been right. They were adapting. "Midsection, prepare to punch through the cloud in a shallow dive. Stay tight, stay fast." He shoved the throttle forward. The Hellcat's engine snarled. They plunged into whiteness. Inside the cloud, the world vanished, nothing but milky turbulence and the hiss of moisture on the canopy. His altimeter spun. His artificial horizon wobbled. His body screamed lies about his direction. Only instruments could be trusted. "2. Stick with me," Sam said. "No wandering." Static-filled responses echoed back. The light brightened, then the formation burst out into sunlight. And Sam froze. The Japanese had arranged themselves into a giant funnel formation, bombers in the center, climbing softly, while a spiraling ring of Zeros circled them like a vertical cyclone. Any attacker would be forced upward into rotating fire. A kill zone, a meat grinder. "Jesus," Voodoo breathed. Sam made the decision instantly. "Dive under it." "What?" "We go under the spiral and kick upward at the bombers from below. They'll never expect it. Everything out here is suicide. Follow me." He flipped the Hellcat into a downward curve, engine howling. His squadron followed reluctantly. The Zeros reacted late. Their corkscrew pattern was meant for intercepting from above, not below. Sam leveled just beneath the bomber column. The Val's grey bellies slid above him like whales. The exposed fuel tanks and bomb racks were visible. A perfect shot. Open fire. 6. 50 caliber guns roared to life. Tracers spat upward. A Val exploded in a blossom of fire, wings folding as it spiraled down. The rest of midsection unleashed hell. The sky filled with falling debris. The Japanese escort panicked. Zeros peeled from their spirals to intercept, but the maneuver had broken their symmetry. They collided or clipped wings, trying to reorient. Sam pulled up sharply after another burst, tore a bomber apart. Flames engulfed its fuselage. The crew bailed out, their bodies tumbling helplessly. "Stitch! They're on my tail!" Pip yelled. Sam looked left. 2 Zeros latched onto Pip's 6. "I'm coming!" He rolled and plunged. The Zeros were nimble, darting like dragonflies, but they couldn't dive like a Hellcat. Sam throttled back just enough to stay behind them. He squeezed the trigger. His guns sputtered, then jammed. Damn it! He kicked hard left, slipping behind Pip. "Brake right on my mark." "Now!" Pip rolled right. Sam clipped close, drawing gunfire. The Zeros chased him instead. He led them downward through thick cloud, counting seconds, feeling the pressure, and burst out low over the sea. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. 0 pilots followed. Sam slammed the throttle forward. The Hellcat shot across the water, skimming waves. The Zeros chased, firing. Sam flicked his eyes at a wave crest, then pulled a precise upward arc. The Zeros followed too close. He slammed the stick left, performing a sudden low-speed snap roll. Hellcats weren't supposed to manage. The Zeros overshot. Sam flipped inverted and fired his one working wing of guns. The lead Zero burst apart. The other fled. He climbed hard. Smoke. Trails dotted the sky where bombers fell, but many had broken through midsection's attack. "Stitch enemy group diving toward convoy," Hawkeye shouted. Sam scanned. A dozen Vals, escorted by more Zeros, streaked toward the coastline. "Midsection, regroup on me." Only 5 voices answered. The others were dead or limping home. Sam gritted his teeth. "We're not letting them hit our boys on the water. Follow me, max throttle." The Hellcats surged forward. Air screamed over the canopy. They closed on the bombers as they lowered toward the ocean. Destroyers below fired flak upward, black puffs peppering the sky. The Vals lined up their dives. "Take the escorts first," Sam ordered. He and Voodoo broke off. Sam sighted a Zero diving on a destroyer. He fired this time. All guns erupted, the jam clearing. His stream of tracers shredded the Zero's spine. Then he heard the worst sound in aviation, a shrill whistle, a bomb release. A Val peeled upward, its payload, falling straight at the destroyer. "No, no, no." Sam dove, firing wildly at the falling bomb as if bullets could stop gravity. The bomb struck just off the destroyer's bow. The explosion sent a geyser of seawater over the deck. "Damn it!" Sam shouted, but the ship survived. "Stitch 3 on your 6!" Voodoo yelled. Sam jerked upward. Zeros swarmed him like hornets. He rolled left, dodged tracers, then snapped downward into a vertical dive. The G-forces crushed him into the seat, his vision tunneling. But the Hellcat held. The Zeros couldn't keep up. One broke off. Another spiraled away. The third pushed too hard and snapped a wing under stress. Sam pulled up in a wide arc. His breath came ragged. He checked fuel. Low. Ammunition half gone. But the fight wasn't done. Only 3 Japanese bombers remained. They were lining up on the convoy, but their formation was broken. Fear and chaos had ruined their timing. Midsection hit them now. He sped at the trailing Val first, firing a short burst. The bomber disintegrated mid-air. He swerved for the next, but the last Val dove early. breaking formation entirely. It aimed for the largest ship, a supply transport critical to the men on Guadalcanal. If it hit, hundreds would die. Sam shoved the throttle forward until the engine screamed. The Val was seconds from release. He lined up, fired, missed. The Val began its final dive. Sam didn't think. He didn't calculate. He acted. He dove directly at the bomber's tail, too fast, too steep. Air shrieked around him. His plane bucked violently, warning him it could tear apart. He kept going, fired again. This time the bullets hit the Val's right wing. It snapped off like a twig. The bomber cartwheeled, spinning madly, its bomb still attached. It crashed into the sea short of the convoy, erupting in a boiling explosion. Sam pulled up so violently he nearly blacked out. When his vision returned, the sky was empty except for smoke, distant ships. The attack was over. Sam circled once, breathing slowly, letting the tremor in his hands fade. "Mid-section, report in," he said. "Voodoo here. Low fuel but alive. Hawkeye alive. Pip got a hit but I'm stable. Silence for the others." Sam wiped sweat from his brow. "We're heading home." They turned toward Guadalcanal. The sun hung overhead, unforgiving. The air smelled faintly of burned fuel drifting from distant wrecks. As Henderson Field came into view, Sam finally exhaled. The fight replayed in his mind: the spiral trap, the dive, the sea-skimming chase, the nearly doomed convoy. The Japanese were learning, they were adapting, and tomorrow they would try something new again. Sam touched the cockpit frame. "We'll be ready," he whispered. His Hellcat carried him home. The rain came in sudden, angry sheets that rattled against the tin roofs of Henderson Field like 1,000 fists. Lieutenant Sam Stitch Halperin stepped out of the operations shack and blinked into the storm. Wind bent the palms sideways. The sky was a boiling, bruise-coloured mass. Guadalcanal was famous for its miserable weather, cactus rain, the Marines called it, thick enough to drown a man standing up, sudden enough to terrify even veterans. Perfect flying weather for the Japanese. Sam tugged his wet flight cap tighter and jogged across the mud toward his revetment. His boots sank with each step. The smell of wet earth mixed with exhaust fumes, forming a scent he'd come to associate with either survival or death. Inside the revetment, Eddie Mitchell worked frantically beneath the wing of Hellcat 23 with a wrench, water dripping from his chin. "You flying in this?" Eddie asked without looking up. "Orders," Sam replied. "Recon says the Japanese launched something big out of Rabaul." Eddie snorted. "Of course they did. Why wait for sunshine?" Sam pat the side of the cowling. "How's she looking?" Eddie tightened a bolt with a sharp click. "She'll fly. I won't promise you'll enjoy it." Sam smirked. "I never do." Inside the ops tent, the atmosphere cut sharper than any blade. Rain hammered the canvas roof, thunder rolling like distant bombardment. Captain Bishop stood over a map of the Solomons, a line of red pins stretching from Bougainville down toward Henderson. "Listen up," Bishop began. "We intercepted a coded burst from Rabaul indicating Group B launch at dawn. That's the same terminology used before their carrier strike patterns last month." Pilots shifted, exchanging glances. "That's not all," Bishop continued. "Reports from coast watchers on Bougainville say they observed several aircraft types we haven't seen in numbers before, including what may be upgraded Zeros." The tent murmured. "Upgraded?" The old Zero was dangerous enough, lighter, more fragile, with that terrifying turn radius. But upgrades meant the Japanese were desperate, and desperate opponents were unpredictable. Bishop jabbed a finger at the map. "We believe the enemy is preparing a multi-phase assault. Step 1. Fighter sweep to clear our skies. Step 2. Bombers to hit Henderson and our ground fuel reserves. Step 3. Night harassment to keep us grounded for the next wave. If they pull it off, we'll be blind, low on fuel, and vulnerable." He looked each pilot in the eye. "We will not let them pull it off." Sam felt something stir in his chest, anger or resolve. He couldn't tell. Bishop continued. "Stitch, You're leading mid-altitude again. Harass the bomber formations and disrupt their timing. Our best chance is to break their rhythm before the heavy groups arrive." Sam nodded. "Roger." Bishop's eyes softened. "You saved a convoy yesterday, Stitch. Today we need you to save the whole damn island." Sam swallowed hard. "I'll do what I can." An hour later, the storm thinned to a veil of mist. Henderson Field glistened under the grey sky. Mechanics yanked off tarps and started engines. Propellers churned the wet air to white smoke. "Hellcats, prepare for takeoff!" the tower officer yelled. Sam climbed into his cockpit. The seat was damp. Water beaded on the dials. He flicked his switches, primed the engine, and pressed the starter. The Hellcat's Pratt & Whitney radial coughed violently, then roared awake. Radio static crackled. "Stitch, this is Voodoo. You ready, partner?" "Always." "Good," Voodoo replied, "because I don't feel like dying today." Sam smiled grimly. "Then stay close." Engines thundered. One by one, the Hellcats rolled down the runway, kicking up rooster tails of water. Sam pushed the throttle forward. The aircraft fought free of the wet ground, then rose into cloud-choked air. As they climbed through the drifting fog, Sam saw it, a dark smear to the northwest. Smoke. Dozens of aircraft, maybe more, approaching like a massive, ragged shadow against the sky. "Eyes up," Sam said. "This is going to get ugly." The Japanese formation was enormous, bombers in layered rows, fighters stacked above, below, and to the sides in a massive escort web. It looked less like an air formation and more like a floating fortress. Sam exhaled. "Holy hell!" Even Voodoo, king of sarcastic remarks, went quiet. Then Hawkeye's voice choked through the radio. They're using a new pattern. Look at the wings, those aren't standard zeros." Sam zoomed his eyes over a formation of fighters guarding the center. Slightly longer wings, enlarged rudders, streamlined cowlings, and beneath the underbelly fuel tanks the size of barrels. Extended range zeros. "New fighters confirmed," Sam said calmly. "Treat them like old ones. Aim for the guts. They still burn." The Japanese spotted them. The escorts shifted into a V-shaped spearhead, and the sky exploded with motion. "Brake right!" Sam yelled. The Hellcats swung wide as the Japanese swept downward. Sam rolled his aircraft, just as tracers sliced through the space he'd occupied a heartbeat earlier. He yanked back hard, then fired a burst. A zero flashed by too fast. "They're diving faster," Pip warned. "They've improved structural strength." "No, zero dives faster than a Hellcat," Sam growled. "We still own gravity." He shoved the throttle forward and dove after one of the upgraded zeros. The new model was quicker in the initial descent, but Sam knew how to play this game. "Come on. Come on," he whispered. The airframe shook violently as pressure built. The Hellcat screamed in protest, but the Zero screamed louder. At 480 miles per hour, the Japanese fighter wobbled, overstressed, and snapped into pieces as its wings ripped off. Sam leveled out just above the cloud layer. "One down," he said. "Thanks for showing off," Voodoo replied. Then the bombers arrived. Sam aimed for the heart of the formation. The Japanese pilots began a slow descent toward the island, the bombers' engines thrumming like drums. Midsection, aim for the second row middle bombers. Break the spine of the formation. "Roger." "Copy." Sam aligned his sights on a Betty bomber. The large green fuselage filled his view. He fired a long burst. 50 caliber rounds tore into the left engine. Flames billowed out. The bomber lurched sideways, clipping the wing of its neighbor. Both aircraft spiraled out of formation, tumbling downward. Chaos spread like wildfire. Voodoo smoked another bomber. Hawkeye disabled one, forcing it to peel away. But the Japanese escorts reacted with terrifying coordination. 3 Zeros dove from above directly at Sam. He swerved left, just as tracers cut through the bomber he'd been targeting. The bomber exploded behind him, engulfed in flames. "Stitch, "You've got 3 on your tail," someone yelled. "I see them." He rolled upside down, dove, hard, then pulled up suddenly, feeling his stomach slam against his ribs. The zeros overshot, but only barely. The new models weren't as easy to shake. Sam fired at the trailing fighter. His bullets grazed its tail. The Zero spun for a moment, then recovered. "They're tougher," Sam muttered. "They're still human," Voodoo said. Sam saw the bomber wall closing on Henderson. They were minutes from drop range. He had to break them now. Sam dove through a gap in the formation, barely avoiding a bomber's wingtip. The air grew turbulent. Flak bursts erupted around him from Henderson's AA guns. Smoke trails sliced the sky. "Stitch, you're going too low," Pip shouted. "Got no choice." He dove beneath the bomber formation, using the clouds as cover. Light dimmed. Moisture streaked across his canopy. The roar softened, his breathing steadied. He rose through the clouds like a shark breaching water. The belly of a bomber loomed above him. Sam fired. The bomber erupted. Shrapnel hammered his wings. A metallic clang echoed through the fuselage. "Damn it, took a hit," Sam muttered. He glanced at his indicators. Oil pressure dropping. Not catastrophic, but the engine was losing smoothness. He didn't have much time left. Henderson Field's AA guns unleashed fury as the remaining bombers approached. Columns of black smoke blossoms burst around the Japanese formation, but some bombers slipped through, wounded but determined. "They're lining up on the fuel dumps," Hawkeye warned. Sam cut across the sky, flying almost sideways to get angle. "Not today," he growled. He fired at the lead bomber. Missed. He fired again. Missed. He fired a third time. Hit. The right engine burst into flame. The bomber rolled over and crashed into the jungle, but another slipped past. It released its bombs. Sam watched helplessly as the bombs arced toward the ground. The explosions rocked the eastern side of the airfield. Smoke clouds ballooned upward. "Fuel dump?" Sam asked breathlessly. "No." Bishop's voice crackled over the radio. "They hit the old repair shacks. No major damage." Sam exhaled shakily. But it wasn't over. The Japanese fighters, dozens of them, were reorganizing. "This isn't a standard attack," Sam muttered. "They're trying to bleed us dry, tire us out," Hawkeye replied. "If this is Phase 1, then Phase 2 will be worse." Voodoo finished. Sam turned toward the regrouping fighters. Rain poured again. Wind buffeted the aircraft. Lightning flashed somewhere distant. The storm was returning, and the Japanese were using it as cover. "Mid-section, form up on me," Sam said. "We push them back, every last one." The battered Hellcats rejoined formation. Sam wiped rain from his eyes and tightened his grip on the stick. It was far from over. In fact, Rabaul hadn't even played its full hand yet. Dawn crept over Henderson Field in a slow, bruised orange glow, washing the shattered landscape in a faint, almost merciful light. Smoke drifted in lazy sheets from burned-out wrecks, craters still steamed. And across the airfield, over a mile of hard-won ground, small knots of Marines walked quietly among the bodies, checking for the living, tagging the dead. The battle for Guadalcanal was not over, but the night that had nearly broken them was. Lieutenant Jack Baylor sat on an overturned fuel drum near the edge of the revetments, flight suit torn, boots caked with dried mud and blood. His right hand still shook from adrenaline after the dogfights and the artillery that followed. Someone had dropped a blanket over his shoulders. He didn't know who. He barely remembered sitting down. He only remembered Kuroda's Zero descending on him like a white streak of doom, the muzzle flashes, the impossible maneuvering in the dark and the final explosion. A single spark of light in all the night's chaos. Flak? A stray shell? Another pilot? Fate playing? Dice? He still didn't know. He wasn't sure he wanted to. A corpsman approached him. "Sir? Need morphine? Water?" Jack blinked. "Water. Just water." The corpsman handed him a canteen and moved on to other wounded pilots clustered under a makeshift medical tent. Jack unscrewed the cap, drank, and felt the cool burn in his throat. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe, to truly breathe for the first time in hours. Somewhere behind him, engines coughed to life. Ground crews were already patching up the least damaged Hellcats, checking oil lines and bullet holes, preparing them for whatever would come next. Henderson Field never slept. Henderson Field never could sleep. A shadow fell across Jack. Captain Merrick stood over him, his own flight gear dusted with soot and streaked with oil, a white bandage wrapped around his left forearm. Despite everything, Merrick's posture remained steady, stubborn, unbreakable. "You flew well last night," Merrick said, voice low but firm. "Damn well." Jack let out a tired, humorless laugh. Felt more like surviving than flying. "In this place," Merrick replied. "That's the same thing." Merrick sat beside him on the fuel drum, groaning as if every joint were rusted. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the sun rise over the pitted runway and the wreckage of the Japanese Banzai charge that had nearly swallowed the field whole. "You think Kuroda made it out?" Jack asked quietly. Merrick exhaled slowly, too slowly. "If he did, he's not coming back anytime soon. A beat. We hurt them bad, Jack. Worse than they've been hurt since this whole damned war started. They threw everything at us last night because they knew this was their chance to take Guadalcanal back." Merrick looked at the ruined jungle tree line. "They failed." Jack didn't feel victorious. Not yet, but he felt something shift, a subtle, profound shift in the weight in his chest. For the first time since arriving, Guadalcanal felt less like borrowed time and more like a place the Americans would hold. Bootsteps approached. It was Lieutenant Harris, flight leader, mentor, survivor of a half-dozen missions that should have killed him. His flight jacket was gone, replaced by a ragged undershirt stained with dried blood and engine grease. He carried a clipboard he'd probably stolen from some overworked supply sergeant. "We're gathering the pilots," Harris said. "Debrief in 5 minutes." Jack nodded and stood. His legs wobbled, but he steadied himself. Merrick clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "Come on, they'll want your account." They walked across the battered airstrip together. Marines saluted them, some smiling weakly, others simply acknowledging them with weary nods. Jack noticed how many of the men had bandages over their heads, arms, or torsos. He noticed how many stretchers passed by. He forced himself not to count. At the debriefing area, little more than a circle of crates, Harris addressed the pilots. "We lost more planes than I ever wanted to," he said plainly. "But we held the field. And intelligence confirms the Japanese have begun withdrawing remnants of their infantry north. Their air cover is shot, their reinforcements are thin. In short, last night didn't break us. It broke them." A ripple of quiet pride moved through the pilots. Then Harris looked directly at Jack. "And one of you," his gaze didn't soften, "managed to tangle with Commander Kuroda himself and come back alive. That's not just skill, that's the kind of flying that turns the tide." A few pilots murmured. One let out a low whistle. Jack felt heat rise in his face. "I just survived the night, sir." A faint breeze passed through the field, ruffling torn windsocks and lifting smoke from the craters. The sun climbed higher, its brightness pushing back the shadows of the battlefield. Jack looked at the sky, clear, blue, endless. A pilot's sky. A survivor's sky. A sky where the next fight would come sooner than anyone wanted, but where he would meet it with steadier hands. For now, though, he allowed himself something rare. Hope. Not the naive hope of early war, but the hardened, sober hope of someone who had faced death in the dark and clawed his way back into the light. He turned to his comrades, bruised, bloodied, exhausted, but still standing. "Let's get our planes ready," he said quietly, because the war wasn't over. But neither were they. And on the scarred, stubborn ground of Guadalcanal, that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.